Okay.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to General Operating Support for Artists Grant Info Session for the fiscal year 2025. Even though it is May 15th, 2024, this is for the application due July 1st. So today we're going to talk about these things. What is RISCA? The grant program overview, grant process from application to notification, important rules, structure of the application, some writing tips and things to stay away from, and then we'll go question by question through the application. I do want to let you know that I am recording today, and this will be freely available on our YouTube channel to watch in perpetuity. So just know that your questions and comments will be recorded. All right, so first, for all y'all who don't, housekeeping. I have a whole thing here. So closed captions are not turned on yet. So if you need closed captions, you can go down to the bottom of your screen and it'll bring up a little toolbar, and one of those options will be closed captions that you can turn on or off as needed. I'm going to ask you to stay muted unless you're actively asking a question. As I noted, we're recording this, and I would prefer that you hold your questions to sort of, I'll ask at several points in like natural places for questions about what we just talked about. So hold them for that, or just drop them in the chat, which I'll be looking at too. And know that there will be a follow-up email with the links I mentioned with the recording of this. I can tell you pretty much for sure that it'll come Friday and not tomorrow. So here we go. Who or what is RISCA? The Rhode Island State Council on the Arts is a state government agency in the same way that the Rhode Island Department of Health is a state government agency. We're just much smaller and with much less funding. And we're supported by appropriations from the Rhode Island General Assembly and grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. In addition to this grant and the many other grants we also offer technical assistance and staff support to all of our different constituencies with the goal of ensuring that every Rhode Islander has access to quality arts. So this grant program, General Operating Support for Artists, this is a 3-year grant. So you only apply once, and then if you receive the grant, you get it each year for 3 years without having to reapply. This program supports artists to work towards longer-term goals. Something that's really important to note is that the funding is unrestricted. And the grant isn't project-based. So it's not to do something specific. It's not to host a specific workshop. It's about your art practice and yourself as a human in general. This is the sibling of the General Operating Support for Organizations. So basically you can use it to fund any part of your functioning for your art practice. This can include things like rent or your mortgage for your home or your studio, utilities, health insurance, food, childcare, a trip to see family you haven't seen in 6 or 7 years, any number of things that are what you need in order to keep creating your work. It is open to artists who have been residents of Rhode Island for at least 2 years. You must be over the age 18 and not currently enrolled in a degree-seeking program. Some other things are that you have to have a tax ID number, either a social security number or a tax ID number. And you can't be a family member of a current council member or current RISCA staff. To give you a little context before we jump right in, our first, we currently have 2 cohorts. So this is the 3rd year of the grant. So this is the first cohort that will have one more year. And I'm just going to read little bios about them so you can get a sense of who received the grants in the first 2 years of the grant program. So the first person is Anthony A.M. Andrade. They are an activist, a visual and media artist, an educator, a choreographer, and a composer. They're the co-director of the House of Glitter Dance Company and Performance Lab. And their work really is centered on connecting the individual human body to the collective human body through the lens of historical intervention and cultural preservation. AM's also a yoga and wellness instructor. They are a project manager for AS220, working on their racial justice initiative, and are just a wonderful person in general. The next member of our year one group is Jeffrey U. Warren. He's also based in Providence. He's a Korean-American artist and educator, a community scientist, illustrator, and researcher who collaboratively creates community science projects which de-center dominant culture in environmental knowledge production. That is a lot of words. His recent work combines ancestral craft practices and creative work with the diasporic memory through virtual collaborative world building. He's a member of AS220. He's a facilitator with Movement Education Outdoors and part of the New Old Art Collective. He also is currently working on a lot of historical traditional craft practices in woodworking that are really interesting. And the third person is Sabra Malik. She lives in Warwick, and she grew up in Pakistan. She has a BFA and an MFA in graphic design from Punjab University in Lahore. Then she moved to New York and has a master's in industrial design, and which it has complemented her South Asian cultural heritage and a Western art education. Her current work celebrates her passion for textiles in all of their colorful pattern brilliance and sensual tactile nuances. With empathy as a catalyst for understanding, graphic arrangements, dimensional sensitivity, joy of light and color, exuberance of texture and pattern coalesce in transparent holographic-like textile structures in a mature expression of progression from traditional surface work to a new direction of geopolitically engaged sculptural work. These are their provided bios, so they're very artisty and wordy. And then finally, in our first year cohort, we have Evans Molina Hernandez, who's a multidisciplinary artist that experiments in painting, performance, music and sound, and experimental video. He uses guerrilla documentary, dance, and performance as educational tools. He was born and raised in Cuba and moved to the US in 2004, and his art is inspired by themes such as heritage, ritual, immigration, family, folklore, and legend. And then, of course, we have the year two, so last year's 3 awardees. And they are Alexandra Sasha Asbel. She is the founder and creative director of Sashunya, which is a textile art and design company specializing in sustainable textile products using local materials and dyes derived from nature. An immigrant from Kazakhstan, Sasha studied architecture at Texas A&M and at RISD. She teaches part-time in the architecture department at Roger Williams University. She received a Fulbright to explore natural dyes in Sri Lanka in 2019, which was cut short. She had to come back early because of the pandemic. But she really has been working in natural dyes and thinking about using plants and natural fibers here in Rhode Island. She teaches workshops and works with kids as well. And then we have Bob Dilworth, who's a longtime Rhode Islander. He's a nationally and internationally recognized painter who has exhibited all over the world. His works on canvas and paper have won many awards. He is included in corporate and private collections, including Chicago Libraries, the RISD Museum, the Newport Art Museum, and others. He has an MFA from the Art Institute of Chicago, and he taught at universities around the country, most recently URI, where he is pretty recently retired from. And then we have Edwige Charlotte. They are a French-born Haitian immigrant artist and designer. Their work explores the complexities and tensions and challenges of the indigenization process in the Caribbean and Creole contexts using nature-based motifs. They have a transdisciplinary process that really employs installation, sculpture, craft, collage, and most heavily printmaking to present a visual language. Okay, so that's the current cohort who you might be joining. Next up, we're going to talk about the grant process. So here is what applying for a grant looks like at RISCA from the very first beginning of the application till when you get the email letting you know whether or not you got the grant. So the first thing that happens is that you should carefully read the grant guidelines. Then you'll create a profile on Foundit, which is our online grant system. I know many of you already have profiles on Foundit, but we'll look at that a little bit later. Then ask questions, get grant support if needed. I have one-on-one meetings and a couple of drop-in office hours in June. After that, you'll gather your work samples and support materials and write your application. And then this is the really important part, hitting submit before the deadline. Our online portal closes at exactly 11:59 p.m. So make sure I would give yourself at least a 5-minute grace period if you're a person that waits till the last minute, because the portal, once it closes, it closes. It's automatic and we can't accept late submissions for any reason. And then you wait a pretty long time to hear from us. And here's what's happening while you're waiting. Staff, that would be me, reviews all of the applications for eligibility and completeness. So I will read every single application that's submitted, make sure that you meet all of the eligibility requirements and the application is complete. Then all of the eligible applications are sent to the panelists. We're going to talk more about the panelists process in a minute. Panelists read and score the applications at home. Typically, in this grant program, panelists are responsible for approximately 20 to 30 applications. I try and keep it below 25 for GOSA because there's a lot more work samples. And then once we've worked our way through 2 rounds of panel process, the panelists will meet for an all-day review session where they will discuss each of the top 20 applications and update their scores. They'll look at how they as a group scored the applications, and then they'll select the 3 grant recipients. After that, staff writes up panel comments for general operating support for artists based on the number of applications we get, and in order to manage the panel process in a way that doesn't destroy me, we only offer panel comments to the 3 applicants that receive grants. If you don't receive the grant, you won't receive any panel comments. I just don't have the capacity to assemble all of that. Then we'll send those panel comments and the recommendations of the panel to our governing council, who will review and approve them. Then we'll notify you, and then you'll get the grant. Here's the biggest thing. If you don't get the grant, know that excellent applications vastly outnumber the amount of funding available, and the panel is different every single cycle. I'm already working on recruiting panelists for this grant, and none of them are the same people that were on the panel last time. So as I mentioned, for this grant, we have a 2-round panel review. So in the first round, we'll have approximately 13 to 15 panelists, and each application will be read by 2 or 3 of the panelists at home. There'll be a mix of in-state and out-of-state residents. A minimum of 40% of the panelists will be BIPOC or LANA. And then they'll score everything at home. The top 20 scoring applications will move on to the second round. So in that second round, we have 5 panelists. Again, 2 panel members or 40% will be BIPOC or Alana, and everybody on the panel will be working professionally in the arts. This means they're an artist, they're a curator, they're a teacher, they're working professionally in the arts in some way, presenter, etc. We also have we'll have 3 panelists that live or work in Rhode Island, and then 2 from out of state. Other things to know about the panelists is that all of our panelists are over 18. Folks can serve on panels once a year for 2 years, but then take a year off. The panels they serve on in a 2-year period must be for 2 different grant programs. So nobody that served on this grant panel last year will be serving on it this year. And then every panelist participates in about an hour-long training, 2-part training. Half of it's on logistics and the grant program and the rubric, and then the other half is about implicit bias in panel decision-making. And as a reminder, RISCA staff do not make funding decisions or evaluate applications, which is actually great because it means that I'm sort of impartial and I get to help y'all with your applications. And if you're interested in serving on our panels, let me know. We have a form for that. We're always looking for people. I just myself use about 80 panelists every year. Okay. So here's some FAQs. If you get the grant and you're moving out of state, or you've decided to go in another direction, or any other thing, you can decline the grant for any reason. Nothing bad will happen. It won't impact your future applications. Numbers of applications. So this grant particularly is RISCA's most competitive grant program. As I said earlier, there are far, far more applications than we have funding for. Based on the past 2 years, I expect to receive between 130 and 150 applications, and 3 people will get these grants. So that's a fancy way of saying it's not you, it's our budget. We have to say no to a lot of really incredible applications. Okay. Here's my don't be late slide. Grant portal turns off at 11:59 exactly, and no late applications will be accepted for any reason. And again, I have drop-in office hours on July 1st in the afternoon, but those end at 4 p.m. And then after that, I won't be around to help you if something happens at 11:30 p.m. So we always advise getting stuff together earlier because you never know what will happen with technology. Okay, what happens if you submitted your grant application and you go back and look at it and you're like, oh man, I submitted the completely wrong link, or I attached something incorrectly, or whatever? Before the deadline, so if you submitted on June 15th, and you realize that on June 16th, you can send me an email and I can set your application back into draft. You can fix it and then submit it again. After the deadline, kind of too bad. If there's something that needs to be fixed that we see can be as part of the eligibility screen, like getting an incorrect link, like attaching something in an incorrect file format, accidentally answering an eligibility question incorrectly, we'll contact you and there'll be a chance to fix it. That being said, you won't be able to make any substantive changes to your application. So no rewriting of the narrative, no changing of major things. And then if your application is not eligible, or if we have questions about it or concerns, we'll contact you via email. Rubrics. I'll show you where this lives on our website, but every grant program at RISCA uses an evaluation rubric that the panel uses to score the applications. The exact evaluation rubric that the panel will be using to score your applications is available on the grant program page of the RISCA website, which we'll be navigating to shortly. Okay, what does this application look like? So just like all of the other RISCA grant applications, there's 3 main sections. There's the eligibility questions, which may include some personal information. There's the narrative questions, 4 main questions in this grant program, and then work samples. So in some other grants, that's support materials. This one, it's work samples. So we have two sections of work samples. We have required and we have optional. And I'll talk about all of them. So the required work samples are bio, resume, or CV. We encourage you to use whichever one you already have and you feel like best reflects you and your work. It can be just a bio, it could be a bio and a resume, it could be some combination. Please don't give us a 20-page CV and a resume and a bio. Please don't give us a 20-page CV, but something short that the panel can tell about you. Don't spend too much time on this. This is supposed to be what you already have. The second piece is a letter of recommendation. So that letter of recommendation must be from somebody who lives or works in Rhode Island, and that can speak to you as an artist. It cannot be from an immediate family member. It shouldn't be about if you have another job at Home Depot. It should not be about your life at Home Depot. It should really be about your work as an artist. And then the work samples list. This is just a list of what work samples you have included in the application with a short description of giving them context. So if it's paintings, you'll want to say the name, the media, the title, the media, the size, the year completed, and then maybe a sentence or three about what the painting, to give some more context. And that's true for any form of work sample. We have optional uploads. So the first two, I want to encourage you to be genuinely optional. If you're an artist that does not have a website or does not use your social media primarily for your art making, that's fine. I would say at least 50% of the applications we see will not have websites or social medias. So don't feel like you need to go make that just for this grant. It's just an optional thing if you're already doing those things. One quick thing about social media is that you don't want to send us, and this does happen where people send us their personal social medias that are, there's nothing about them as an artist. It's primarily them, pictures of them out drinking with their friends, right? We don't get anything from that as panelists. So don't send us that if that's what you have. Send us something that's really focused on your artwork. And that could be your personal social media, as long as you're primarily like you're okay with strangers looking at it and making some decisions about you based on it. Okay, so then work samples. They're optional. I don't think you will not get this grant if you do not submit work samples. I encourage you to think creatively about how to use what you can submit. So you may submit up to a maximum of 3 of the following: up to 10 images, up to 15 minutes of video, up to 15 minutes of audio, up to 30 pages of writing, and up to 1 full manuscript of dramatic writing for performance. So for visual artists, I would strongly encourage you to think about what documentation of you or your work you have that's not just those 10 images. Use those 10 images to really focus on good documentation of your work. But maybe you're a sculptor and you have like a quick 2-minute video that's a 3-dimensional walk around of your piece. Maybe you have been interviewed by someone, like you have a Networks Rhode Island interview. That's a great use of the video. Up to 30 pages of writing can be reviews or critiques of your work. So there's other ways to expand what you're submitting if you're a visual artist that just thinks you have images. You can think outside of that box there. Or if you're a teaching artist and you have video of you teaching or of your students, you just have to make sure that in the work samples, you note that really clearly what the panel's looking at. I'm going to pause for questions. Okay. Anybody have any questions yet?
I had one question, if you don't mind. You
Yeah.
mentioned a maximum of 3 of the following.
Mhm.
So you can't do like, see if it says 10 images, you couldn't do like 5 images and do part of all of them. You can only do 3 of them.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that was a stupid question. I think pretty much was,
No
uh,
stupid questions.
uh,
That was not a stupid question. Any other questions? All right, we'll keep on trucking. Okay, so here are we have gotten all of the RISCA program staff members together, and here's our brain trust of the top 5 things to do when you're writing a grant. The first one is carefully read and follow the directions. I know a couple of you, this is not your first grant workshop with me. So you've heard me talk about reading and following the directions previously, but my quick advice, my quick anecdote is that when I first started, I was pretty shocked that about 50% of the applications that I received didn't fully follow the directions. And this includes things like file naming, but also things like answering the question that has been being asked, or making sure you're applying for the correct grant, sort of bigger things. So 50% of people weren't following the directions. I was like, that's a crazy amount. It must be because I'm working with artists, none of whom are professional grant writers, right? None of you are hiring this out to somebody professional. You're all doing it yourselves. So I asked some other funders in other fields, and it turns out that that 50% number is not about artists. It's about everyone. So this includes like hospitals that are writing grants for $50 million are still getting 50% of them are still getting not following the directions. So y'all follow the directions and you'll already be better off than 50% of the other people applying for what you're applying for. Second piece is really think about who is reading these applications. So as I described during the panelist section, these are all people who are experts in the arts. But if you're a printmaker, there may not be a printmaker on the panel, right? We only have 5 panelists in the second round. There's not room for every artistic discipline. So you can speak to an artist, but make sure you're speaking in terms when you're writing your application that somebody who doesn't have a deep familiarity with your specific art form can understand. Because we might have, you know, a music presenter or a museum curator or, you know, folks that just don't, they're in one discipline, they're experts in one discipline, and they may not speak the language of all art forms. Make sure your application is telling a unified story and that the big picture is clear. You want all of your narrative questions to be telling one story that makes sense together. The success and who your community is should be related to the impact, and all of that should be related to who you are as a person. We are an arts funder. The people reading your applications will be artists. So unlike some other grants, the panel really cares about the why, the squishy stuff, why you are making this artwork. So make sure you don't miss that, but also make sure you don't miss the what, the logistics. I sort of call it the why and the what, or the squishy and the concrete, right? You want about 50-50 of each of those. So not only touchy-feely and why, but not only what and logistics. And then this really helps get at all 4 of the previous ones, which is have an outsider read your application. This shouldn't be the person that has the studio next to yours that you're talking to about your artwork every day. This shouldn't be your best friend. It should be somebody who's a little bit more outside of the system of your art making practice, so they can look for these questions like, oh, do I understand what this person is talking about, even though I'm a musician and I'm reading an application about painting, but also that you're really telling the whole clear story. And here's our top 5 things not to do, otherwise known as the most frequent mistakes we see on RISCA grant applications. So the first one for this grant is that it's written about as a project grant with a focus on one specific project and asking for funding for one specific project, rather than about an artist's full practice. The second most common problem is that the wrong files that are attached, or they're the wrong format, or the links you sent aren't working. Please check those. Three, and this will happen less in this grant program because it's the only one open right now, but you applied in the wrong grant program. Then work samples are an afterthought rather than central to the application. We're an arts funder, we want to see some art, and the art needs to be connected as part of that unified story. You know, you should be able to see what you're talking about in the narrative in your artwork. And then finally, the answers to the narrative questions are really short and or don't directly address the question that's being asked. The questions that are being asked in our grant applications are directly related to the rubric criteria. So we encourage you to answer the questions that are in front of you. This sounds silly. I promise it's not. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing briefly. Questions so far? Okay, y'all are a quiet group.
I sort of have a question. You want to know about us as an artist rather than specific projects. Um, if if we are multidisciplinary and work with people in different communities, and if we don't, if the actual object of art is not the main focus, but has like the more I keep working, the more I realize what I'm really after is changing energy rather than producing a specific thing. I want to change energy, and produce things that will change energy and change energy in people. How do you write that up? I mean,
You just said it, and I think you can
oh,
talk about,
okay.
yeah, like you just said it. Um, but I think you can also, like, because I know you and your work, I think you can also talk about how important teaching and being community engaged is, and that your art making might not be an object or something like that, but it's the teaching, it's the community engagement, and getting those people to make art. And so for your work samples, you could include like images that your students have made, or video of you teaching, or video of the flag, one of the flags. You know, you can include stuff like that that shows your art practice as being that community-based art practice.
Okay. And I guess the other question that I have is, um, I realize that the way that I approach my art is like semi mystical, more metaphysical than like, I hesitate to even bring up that aspect of it to people because people are so pragmatic and, is that something I should stay away from in the grant or mention?
If it's important to you, you should mention it, but I don't know if I can really give advice broadly on that. I think I should read a draft and we should talk about it.
Good idea.
I think we should meet not in front of a whole bunch of people.
Me too. Okay. I'm done.
All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to give a little tour of RISCA's website, and then of the application portal, and then we're going to look at the actual application. Everybody sees RISCA's website, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so this is our brand new, well, pretty new website. So the easiest way to get information about these grants is to go into the grants, click our grants. We'll scroll down. Artists is second. General operating support for artists is at the top of the artist section because it's open right now. So this page on our website will give you all of the grant guidelines. On the right side, you can download the grant guidelines as a PDF. Excuse me. You can download the application questions as a PDF if you want to look at them ahead. Here's where you see the evaluation rubric, and we'll click into this really quick. This is the evaluation rubric that the panel is going to be using. I will say that this cohort and community piece is a little bit different than last year based on feedback from applicants and the panel. We changed up that last question if you've applied previously, and it's a little bit different. So hopefully a little more clarity there. This is a template. We won't worry about that right now. So the easiest way for you, there other things are, you can email me right from here. And then also if you want to schedule a one-on-one meeting to talk through anything specific, you can click right here. It'll take you to a Calendly sign up where you can just sign up to meet with me for 30 minutes on Zoom. It's the only way I schedule meetings during grant season. So that's the best way. Email me, sign up for a one-on-one meeting. So to get to the grant application, you just click right here and it will bring you to this page, which is Foundant. It's our online grant system. You can tell, so we have 2 online grant portals that look exactly alike, which you may know if you also work at an arts organization. So you can always use that link and it will be the right one, but you want to make sure you're logging on to the grant portal for individuals. Those individuals right here. It'll say organizations there if you're on the wrong one. So I'm going to log on not to my Riska version. Okay. Great. So this is what you'll see when you log on. So I have not started an application and I'd like to. So what I'm going to do is go up here and click apply. What you'll see here is every grant application that's currently open, as well as a preview. So you can preview this. You have to answer these questions to get past them. And then it'll show you. So you can just preview the whole application here. And if you're ready to apply, you can hit apply. And it will start an application for you. So here at the top of the grant application, you'll see a download where you can directly link to the grant guidelines, download as a PDF, and that evaluation rubric. The first section is eligibility, and it won't bring you to the rest of the application until you correctly answer these questions. So the first question is about U.S. residency. You must be a legal resident of the United States with a tax ID number. This actively includes refugees, immigrants, and temporary residents. This does not include people in the country on a tourist visa or usually a student visa either. Then you have to have lived in Rhode Island for at least 2 years at the time of your application. And that includes you spending, if you have a second home, if you travel a lot, you must be in the state for at least 183 days per year. That's a number from the IRS. We didn't just make that up from nowhere. And are you 18 years of age or older? Then are you currently enrolled in an arts degree seeking program or attending high school full-time? So this is where a lot of people get tripped up and they just answer yes really quickly, but the answer to that one should be no. So being enrolled in an arts degree seeking program, that doesn't mean you're taking a class at the Steelyard or the art club. That means you're an enrolled student at a college or university studying an arts degree. All right. Then the first questions you're going to answer are your preferred name and your pronouns. So we ask for preferred name because many artists use names other than their legal name, and it's important that you use the name that your check will be sent to for your Foundant profile. but we like to make sure we're referring to people respectfully and accurately, so we ask for a preferred name. For a lot of people, it is their legal name. That's fine. Then the next question is pronouns. This is an optional question. And if you're curious about what this is and why it matters, there's a link that explains it. And then we get into the meat of the application. So there are 4 questions here. I will let you know that we accept answers to these questions in 3 different formats. So you can either write them like a traditional grant application, but you can also record audio or video of yourself speaking the answers to the questions. If you use the audio or video options, you have to submit them using a YouTube or a Vimeo link. If that link, if that video is password protected, you need to include the password there. There's also hard time limits there, and if you go over the time, we'll have a problem, right? Because it's the same thing as the character limits, the time limit. One thing about the audio and video recording is that they must be unedited and just you talking. They're not a way to weave in extra work samples or show us your reel or anything of that. It has to be just you speaking the answer to these questions. Okay. So the first grant application question, narrative question, is who are you as a person and an artist? What is important to you? Tell us a bit about your art practice and art form and what you want to spend your next year focusing on in your art practice. So here you want to talk about, it's a little bit of a altered bio where you're really talking about deeply about your art practice, your art form, what you're doing now, what you hope to be doing. And then that's the longest space as well as 3,000 characters. The second question is impact. Why is this grant important to you as an artist and person? How will it move your artistic practice or the business supporting your artistic practice forward? So what we want to see here is basically what will you be able to do with this grant that you wouldn't be able to do without it? Why does this move you forward? I will say now, after 2 years of watching the panel reviews, that answers here that only focus on the business supporting the business aspects of the art practice don't generally score well. So I would encourage you, again, this is a thinking about the squishy and the concrete, right? The why and the what. So you want to make sure you're not only talking about the business aspects of supporting your art practice, but also the art practice itself, how it will impact you as a person, how you'll be able to move your art making forward or grow or stretch or change or try something new, etc. Right. And then the next question, question 3, is defining success. Describe what success looks like to you. What are your goals and what do you hope to learn? And what success looks like can mean so many different things. It's really individual. And for a lot of people, it is, again, a balance of the squishy and the concrete, right? We want to be making a living, but we also want to be making the art that we want to make. We want to be making a living, but we also want to be impacting the people or working in the communities we want to work with. So thinking about what your best case scenario is 3 years from now is a really good way to start about defining success. Like, what do you want your life to be like in 3 years if everything goes right? What are your goals? What do you hope to learn from that? And again, a balance of the concrete and the squishy. And then the final narrative question is about cohort and community. What do you hope to learn from the cohort of grantees? What do you hope to contribute to the cohort of grantees? And how will you connect what you learn and contribute to your community or communities of practice? So as part of this grant, you join this cohort. I went over earlier who's already in that group. There will be cohort meetings. There will be some meetings with me. There will be professional development that is tailored to the members of the cohort. So you really want to think about what you want to learn as part of that group, and also what you want to offer that group. And then all of us are working in various community or communities of practice. That means really different things to different people. How are you going to bring back this experience to your communities of practice? How is this going to sort of ripple outwards beyond just you? All right, any questions about the narrative section of the application? Jen, I saw you unmute. I'm ready. Maybe not. Oh, you muted again. Okay. False alarm. There's time for questions anytime. Yes.
Let me put my video on. Is it even worth applying if you've been an artist your whole life, but it's not your primary means of income, but you wish
Yes.
it would have been? Okay.
I mean, and I think that can mean, you know, your art making not being your primary form of income can mean different things to a lot of different people. And I will say there's at least one, if not two, members of the current cohort for whom art making isn't their primary form of income. We ask, our definition of practicing artist, we ask that you're a practicing artist, is that you are hoping to make some or all of your income from art making. So we don't expect every artist to be making a living as an artist. And then that also depends on how you define art making, right? Because like we have one member of the cohort who primarily made a living as a professor, a college professor. He was teaching painting, but his, main income was from being a professor, not from being an artist. So there's a lot of different ways of making a living. We're not discriminatory, and we don't think that that defines being an artist or not being an artist.
How about the pedigree of education of the people involved? The artists that are applying and stuff like that.
It varies so widely because artists vary so widely. So we have folks that have MFAs from RISD or who teach at RISD. We also have folks who didn't go to college at all. And those people are both represented in the current cohort. So it's really when the evaluators when the panelists are looking at it, and if you look at the rubric, you know where you went to school, where you trained, how many shows you've had, that is not part of the review criteria. That does not matter.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so here's the work samples support materials part. So you'll upload your resume, CV, or bio here. The file has to be 2 megabytes or under. I know it's tiny, but it is the boundaries of our online grant system. And one thing to just note, this must be uploaded as a Word doc or a PDF. If you upload it as a pages file, for example, the online grant system won't be able to read it. So we'll have to go back to you and be like, nope, this isn't going to work. So make sure you're following this little direction right here. And then all of these pieces are optional. If you have an artist website, great. If you don't, do not stress. As I said earlier, about 50% of our applicants do not have websites or social medias. Again, social medias should be publicly available profiles that somebody can just click the link on and see your art making versus just you out with your friends at brunch. Some of having brunch with your friends is fine, but it wants to be a professional style page, social media. Then we have the letter of recommendation. Again, it's must be uploaded as a Word doc or a PDF. The way that you're going to do that is you're going to get the letter of recommendation and upload it yourself. They won't send it to me. If they do send it to me, I'll get in touch with you and we'll talk through uploading it here. So it's not a disaster if folks send it to me instead, but they should send it to you to upload here. Again, has to be a Word doc or PDF. And this piece is important, 1 page maximum. Letter of support from someone that you respect and that can speak to your potential as an artist. I will say that the best letters of recommendation are from people that know you and your artwork and your goals pretty well. It's not from the most prestigious person you can meet who will just write you one quick sentence saying, yes, this person is an artist, they're great, give them the grant, right? It wants to be a little bit more in depth than that. And then we have the work samples. So you'll submit your work samples using a Google Drive folder. So you'll create a Google Drive folder. Included in that has to be the work samples list, which is just a numbered list with the titles, media you're created, and some context. It goes in the Google Drive with your work samples. And then, you want to be where somebody can just click the link and it can take you to it. It can be password protected. You'll just need to send me the password. But a bunch of people who are not me will need to be looking at this. So you want to make it as easy as possible for all of us to access your work. Now we're to the easy parts. Who are your elected officials? We are only asking which US congressional district you live in, 1 or 2. That's the federal level. So that's either Gabe Amo or Seth Magaziner, 1 or 2. And then finally, the assurances, which basically just says, yes, I'm telling the truth. This work is accurate. Everything I'm saying here is accurate. Here we go. And then you'll submit the application. You can also, if you want to do this in chunks or bits, you can save the application. You don't have to write it all in one go. I always recommend if you're writing an application, I'm gonna stop sharing. If you're writing an application that you have a copy and pasted version of it in a Word document or a Google Drive document, Google document, somewhere else, because technology is going to technology at the worst possible time, right? It doesn't matter how technology savvy you are. It doesn't matter if it's never happened before. And then you also want to be able to look back at your past, if you ever want to look at your past grant applications or reuse some of the language that you're using, then it's really easily available. That being said, you can see that if you've applied for things in the past through RISCA, through this online portal, all of your past applications, regardless of whether or not you were granted, are in the system if you want to look at those. Okay, questions? Yeah. Will you unmute yourself?
Okay, now can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
I'm sort of stuck on the work samples. I could do 10 photos of my artwork, 10 photos of teaching, 10 photos of community. So how is it better to do 5 of each or 3 of each, or put the teaching one? I mean, how to get it all in there?
It really depends on what you're writing about in the narrative. So if you're talking about all of those aspects of your practice in your grant narrative, you're going to want to reflect all of those in some way. One sneaky video thing is that if you have like a bunch of images of you teaching or of community stuff, you can drop them into like a video editor and make a video.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend that for
No,
images of your artwork, because people will want to really look at those as single images, but that might be a nice way of getting in some additional space since you're limited to 10.
Video of teaching and demonstrations. I missed that part. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Are you done?
Yep. Yes.
Oh, okay. I had a question for the social media sites. I mean, I have my own website, but is LinkedIn and Creative Ground, are those also, so I could also include those as,
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn, Creative Ground, Facebook, Instagram. I see Twitter, but Twitter is harder as artists, and also it's not publicly accessible if you don't have an account anymore. So like I don't have a Twitter account. I can't look at your Twitter. But other ones, I guess Snapchat and YouTube are other ones I see a lot. For musicians, sometimes they'll link their Bandcamp page there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Right, so here we are at the end of this. There's lots of other ways to get more support if you want or need it. The first place to always start is our website, which is arts.ri.gov. This recording will be on, as I mentioned, on YouTube on Friday, and I'll send you a link to it via email. I have a bunch of drop-in office hours coming up on Zoom. I think the first one's not till the beginning of June, but those are just sort of, I'll just be sitting in a Zoom room, and anybody can pop in or out and ask me any questions. You can also sign up for a one-on-one meeting with me using that Calendly link that I showed y'all earlier. Again, that link will also be in the email on Friday. And then you can email me. We also have email me with specific questions. Don't email me to make an appointment, because I'll just send you back to the Calendly. And then we also have 2 Facebook groups that are peer support groups that are good places to ask questions, but they're also good places. We'll post events like this. We'll post our grants. We'll post other grants. We'll post other calls for work, that sort of thing. So the first one is Arts Administrators of Rhode Island. And then Todd manages that one. And then I manage one called Artists and Creatives of Rhode Island. And they're good sources of support if you have questions or just want to know what's going on. And that's it. I'm done. I'm going to turn off the recording.